Horrifying. A gaunt, trembling mother stands in the freezing apartment in Pilsen, clutching her 5 small children tightly, tears streaming down her face as she reads the eviction notice taped to the door. She whispers, her voice shattering like it's about to break apart. Why? Why would God let me lose everything? What did I do wrong to make my children suffer like this? At the very same moment, just a few blocks away, the most powerful man in Chicago, Sebastian Rossi, sits in his multi-million-dollar penthouse holding an expensive glass of liquor, staring blankly at the pitch-black river. He mutters, his voice low like a curse. I killed the only woman I ever loved. And perhaps I've also killed my own 5 children without even knowing it. Can you even imagine? 4 years ago, he looked straight into her eyes and said, "You're nothing but a mistake. Trash I regret every time I think about you." And today, he discovers the most horrifying truth of his life. Those 5 children are his own flesh and blood, and the woman he once pushed into hell is now standing on the brink of losing her children forever. Can a man who once ruled the darkness really kneel down and atone? Or is this just a new tragedy bloodier than before? Listen closely. This is the story of betrayal, crushing remorse, and a love that both of them once believed had died a very long time ago. Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Alex Truths and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video. Comments sharing your emotions, or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. Alright, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. The late October sun of 2025 hung low over Millennium Park in Chicago, casting long golden shadows across the Cloudgate sculpture and the wide lawns where families gathered on this crisp Saturday afternoon. Emily Harper pushed the oversized double stroller with one hand, while clutching a worn canvas tote in the other, her thin coat pulled tight against the wind that always seemed to find its way through the seams. The stroller was secondhand bought from a church sale for $20. She could barely spare its wheels, squeaking with every bump on the cracked path. Inside, her 5 4-year-old children, Sophia, Lucas, Mia, Ethan, and Noah, were bundled in mismatched thrift store jackets and blankets she'd sewn herself from old sheets. They were quiet for once, mesmerized by the pigeons strutting near the fountain, but Emily's mind was nowhere near peaceful. Her stomach growled a familiar hollow ache. Breakfast had been half a banana split 5 ways, and the last crumbs of yesterday's day-old bread from her tiny Pilsen bakery cafe, which had sold exactly 3 coffees that morning. Rent was 5 months behind. The landlord had left another red notice eviction letter taped to the door of their cramped 1-bedroom apartment. The electricity flickered more nights than not, and Noah, sweet, fragile Noah, had another oncology checkup next week, the bill for his leukemia monitoring already stacking up like bricks on her chest. She was 28 years old, but some mornings she felt 80. Her body worn thin, from endless shifts, endless worry, endless nights. Soothing, 5 crying toddlers in a space barely big enough for 1 bed. She stopped near the Pritzker Pavilion to let the children watch a street musician play soft guitar chords. Sophia pointed at a shiny balloon tied to a vendor's cart, her steel blue eyes wide with longing. Emily forced a smile. "Maybe next time, baby girl," she whispered, her voice soft and timid, the way it always became when hope felt too heavy to carry aloud. She knew next time was a lie, she told herself daily. Across the lawn, a tall, fair-skinned man in a tailored charcoal overcoat walked with measured steps beside a striking woman whose diamond ring caught every stray beam of light. Sebastian Rossi moved like someone who owned the air around him. Broad shoulders, sharp jaw eyes, the color of storm clouds over Lake Michigan. At 36, he was Chicago's most visible real estate developer, the name behind half the glittering high-rises downtown. But few knew the shadow empire. He still quietly commanded the last fraying threads of the outfit held, together by fear and favors more than brute force these days. Beside him, Lauren Whitaker, his fiancée of convenience, daughter of a powerful alderman, chattered about wedding venues in the Gold Coast, her voice bright and expectant. Sebastian nodded absently, his mind elsewhere. The alliance with Lauren was business, nothing more. He had learned long ago to bury anything resembling feeling beneath layers of control. Yet, as his gaze swept the park out of habit, always scanning for threats, time fractured. There near the fountain, pushing a stroller built for far fewer children than the 5 small heads it carried, was Emily Harper. His breath stopped. The world narrowed to a single point. Her dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail, her face thinner than he remembered, pale skin stretched tight over cheekbones, sharpened by hunger. She wore the same faded denim jacket she'd had 4 years ago, now threadbare at the elbows. But it was the children who delivered the blow that nearly dropped him to his knees. 5 of them, all 4 years old, all with his eyes, those unmistakable steel-blue eyes that stared back at him from every mirror, and the sharp, determined line of his jaw. Sophia lifted her face to watch a bird overhead, and Sebastian felt his heart slam against his ribs so hard he thought Lauren might hear it. The little girl had his gaze cold and keen, exactly as he saw it reflected every morning. Emily's green eyes found his across the distance. Shock drained the color from her face. She froze, lips parting in silent horror. Recognition hit her like a physical force. Dizziness swept through her, the ground tilting her knees, threatening to buckle. 4 years of silence, of pain, of believing he had meant every cruel word he'd said. And now here he was walking with another woman, looking richer, colder, untouchable. Panic surged. Her hands trembled on the stroller handle. She couldn't breathe. The children were hers alone to protect. She seized the bar and turned, pushing with desperate strength, the wheels rattling as she hurried toward the nearest path, heart pounding so violently she tasted copper. Sebastian stood rooted the park, noise fading to a dull roar. Lauren was still talking something about floral arrangements, but the words dissolved. In his chest, guilt and remorse collided like freight trains. 4 years ago, he had forced Emily away with the cruelest words he could summon. "You're a distraction I can't afford. A mistake I regret." He had done it to save her rival factions. Had photos of her threats scrawled in blood-red ink. Make her unimportant, or make her disappear. He had chosen the lie to keep her breathing. But she had been pregnant, with 5 children. His children, and he had known nothing. The knowledge tore through him, violent, consuming. Remorse clawed at his insides, sharp and unrelenting. How many nights had she lain awake in that freezing apartment, stomach-empty children crying, believing he despised her? How many times had she measured formula against rent, medicine against heat? He who could buy entire city blocks with a phone call had left her to starve in the cold. He took one step forward, then another, ignoring Lauren's confused call behind him. His pulse thundered. He had to reach her, explain, protect. But Emily was already disappearing behind a cluster of trees, the stroller bumping wildly, her thin frame hunched against the wind. Inside his mind, conflict raged. The Mafia boss, who never faltered now, felt something crack wide open, raw, aching love that had never died, only been buried under duty and darkness. It surged, now fierce and overwhelming from the first second he saw her again. He wanted to run, to gather them all, to shield them from every hardship he had unwittingly caused. Yet the weight of his world, the threats still lurking, the enemies who would see weakness and strike, held him back for one agonizing heartbeat. Emily glanced over her shoulder once, eyes wide with fear and confusion. She didn't stop. She couldn't. The man who had shattered her heart was here, powerful and untouchable, while she was nothing, destitute, exhausted, powerless. Horror twisted in her gut. What if he tried to take them? What if he walked away again? She pushed harder, breath coming in, short gasps, tears stinging her eyes. The children sensed her distress. Mia whimpered softly. Emily whispered reassurances she didn't believe. "It's okay, sweethearts. Mommy's got you." Behind her, Sebastian broke into a run, long strides eating the distance. Lauren called after him, voice sharp with confusion, but he didn't look back. Guilt and love warred inside him, tearing at the iron control he had spent years perfecting. He had failed her once. He would not fail again. But Emily reached the edge of the park, slipped into the crowd near Michigan Avenue, and vanished like smoke. Sebastian stopped, chest heaving, hands clenched into fists. The wind whipped his coat. In that moment, the powerful man felt utterly broken remorse so deep, it burned love so fierce it threatened to consume him whole. He turned slowly, eyes scanning the streets, where she had disappeared. This was only the beginning. He would find her. He would make it right, no matter the cost. The black Escalade glided through the glittering veins of downtown Chicago past towers of glass and steel that reflected the dying orange light of an October afternoon in 2025. Sebastian Rossi sat motionless in the back seat, coat unbuttoned, hands resting on his knees like a man waiting for sentence. The image of Emily Harper refused to fade, her thin frame bent over the stroller handle, the way her shoulders had hunched when she recognized him, the raw panic that had flashed across her face before she fled. 5 children. His blood. His failure made flesh. He had not spoken since leaving the park. Lauren's voice still echoed faintly in his memory, sharp questions, confusion turning to irritation. But he had left her standing on the grass without a word, without explanation. The silence inside the car felt thicker than the tinted windows. Sebastian lifted his phone and pressed a single contact. Marco answered instantly. "Boss." Emily Harper. Sebastian said the name, tasting like ash and iron. 28, Pilsen. Small bakery called Harper's Corner. Current address, financials, debts, CPS file, medical on the children. All of it. Discreet. Fast. Understood. 90 minutes. Make it 60. The line clicked off. Sebastian closed his eyes. Remorse rose again, slow and suffocating, pressing against his ribs until breathing hurt. 4 years ago, he had stood in her cramped apartment on 18th Street, rain drumming on the single window, and spoken the words he had rehearsed like poison. You're a liability I can't afford. A distraction. A mistake I regret every time I look at you. He had watched her collapse inward, eyes wide, lips trembling, hands clutching the edge of the chipped kitchen counter, as though it were the only thing keeping her upright. Then he had turned and walked out into the storm because the photographs had arrived that morning, her sleeping silhouette framed in bedroom curtains, a red X drawn across her face, and a single typed line beneath. She lives only as long as... She means nothing. He had chosen cruelty to save her life, but she had carried 5 children through that cruelty. Alone, while he signed contracts worth hundreds of millions, attended charity galas in tuxedos that cost more than her yearly rent, slept in a penthouse, where the thermostat never dipped below 72 degrees. The guilt now was not quiet regret. It was violent tearing, a living thing that ripped at the seams of the man he had become. And beneath it, deeper, hotter, burned love. From the instant he saw her in the park, that love had ignited again, fierce and merciless, consuming every rational thought. He wanted to gather her in his arms, bury his face in her hair, whisper apologies until his voice gave out. He wanted to shield those 5 small faces from every hardship he had forced upon them. Yet the weight of what he was, what he still was, held him frozen. A Mafia boss did not beg. A Rossi did not kneel. And yet every cell in his body screamed to do both. The Escalade descended into the private garage beneath his River North tower. Sebastian rode the elevator alone to the top floor, stepped into the vast, silent penthouse, and poured bourbon he did not touch. He stood at the window overlooking the Chicago River, its surface rippling gold and black under sodium lights, and waited. Marco arrived in 53 minutes. He set a slim leather folder on the marble kitchen island. Everything we could gather without raising flags. It's bad, Sebastian. Worse than I expected. Sebastian opened the file. Emily Harper's address, a 1-bedroom walk-up above a shuttered laundromat on 18th and Wood. Rent $1,200 monthly. Balance owed $6,000. Eviction notice filed 14 days earlier. Court date scheduled for the first week of November. Utilities disconnected 4 times in the past 18 months. Reconnection fees paid with credit cards now carrying balances exceeding $23,000 combined. Harper's Corner, her bakery cafe, sat in a narrow storefront 2 blocks from home. Monthly net revenue after expenses $812 last quarter. She opened at 6, closed at 3, baked alone, cleaned alone, served alone. The ovens needed rewiring. One had shorted twice, nearly starting a fire. A health inspector had issued 2 citations she could not afford to correct. The business survived on regulars who tipped in coins and the occasional church donation of flour. The children, Sophia, Lucas, Mia, Ethan, Noah, 4 years and 3 months. Born at 32 weeks in Cook County Hospital. No father listed. Noah diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia at 22 months. 18 months of chemotherapy, spinal procedures, transfusions. Remission achieved, but monthly oncology appointments, daily oral medication, and blood work cost $2,300 per month without insurance. Outstanding hospital balance $47,864.12. Child Protective Services file 2 anonymous complaints: overcrowding, insufficient heat, signs of malnutrition. Caseworker visit 6 weeks earlier. Emily had pleaded for time. Next inspection Tuesday. Removal considered likely if no improvement. Sebastian closed the folder. His reflection stared back from the dark marble, fair-skinned, hollow-eyed, a stranger. "How has she survived?" he asked, voice barely audible. Marco looked away. "She hasn't. Not really. She eats last, sleeps on the floor so the kids have the mattress. Sells day-old bread to pay for Noah's medicine. Last winter, the heat went out for 11 days. She kept them warm with the oven door open until the gas bill arrived." Sebastian's hand closed into a fist. The knuckles whitened. He saw her in his mind, malnourished, hollow-cheeked, dark circles under green eyes that once sparkled when she laughed. Sleep-deprived, shivering through Chicago winters, in a coat too thin, rocking 5 crying children while the wind howled through cracked windows. And he, Sebastian Rossi, had allowed it. Had chosen power over her. Had let her believe he hated her. Love surged again, passionate, burning, almost painful. It clawed at him, demanding action, demanding he storm her door and beg forgiveness. but guilt countered with equal force he had no right. His world would only drag her deeper into darkness. He set the folder down, put eyes on the building. Discreet. Tonight, no contact. Report any movement, landlords, strangers, anyone. Marco left. Sebastian remained at the window until the city lights smeared. Then he took the keys to the black Range Rover. He rarely drove himself and headed south. Pilsen was quiet under the street lamps. He parked 3 blocks away and walked. Her building looked smaller, sadder up close, peeling paint graffiti tags, a single bulb glowing behind thin curtains on the 2nd floor. He stood in the shadow of a closed bodega and watched. A silhouette crossed the window, Emily rocking Noah against her shoulder. The boy's small hand clutched her shirt. She swayed gently, lips moving in a lullaby. Sebastian could not hear. Then Lucas appeared, tugging her sleeve. She knelt, kissed his forehead, whispered something soft. Her shoulders shook once quick silent before she straightened and smiled for them. Sebastian's throat closed. He saw the exhaustion carved into every line of her body. Saw her wipe her eyes with the sleeve of a sweater that had once been his. Saw her press her forehead to the window glass for a long moment alone, thinking no one watched. Humiliation and pity knifed through him, hers and his own mirrored. Across the street, 3 men stepped from an alley mouth. Leather jackets, purposeful. One tilted his head toward her window. Sebastian recognized the posture scouts from a splinter faction, old outfit rivals, who had never forgiven his consolidation of power. Rage flared cold and precise. He crossed the street in long strides, coat open presence, radiating the quiet authority that once made men lower their eyes. The 3 men stiffened. Rossi, the leader, said, voice tight. "You're out of your territory, Sebastian," replied, tone even lethal. "Walk away. Now. You're watching her. You leave or I ensure you never watch anything again." They exchanged glances, then retreated, hands visible melting into the dark. Sebastian stood beneath her window. Emily appeared again, lowering Noah into a crib made from stacked crates. She leaned over, kissed his forehead, then sagged against the wall, sliding down until she sat on the floor, head in her hands. Sebastian's vision blurred. Love roared through him, fierce, protective, consuming. He wanted to climb the fire escape, knock fall to his knees. But he knew she would see only the man who had broken her. Not tonight. He turned back toward the car, each step heavier. Inside the vehicle, he sat in silence. The city glittered around him, wealthy, indifferent, untouchable. And 2 blocks away, in a freezing walk-up, the woman he loved rocked their children, whispering promises she could barely keep. Remorse became unbearable. Tomorrow he would step into her world, and this time nothing would stop him. The bakery lights were already off when Sebastian arrived at Harper's Corner, but a single bulb burned above the back door, in the narrow alley behind 18th Street. It was just past 9 o'clock on that cold Monday night in late October of 2025. Wandered the wind slicing off the Chicago River and carrying the faint metallic scent of coming snow. He had waited until closing until the last customer, a tired nurse who bought a single-day-old muffin with exact change, had shuffled away. Now the street was empty except for the occasional car hissing past on wet asphalt. Sebastian stepped from the shadows of the alley, his black overcoat open against the chill he barely felt. His heart hammered with a rhythm he could not control, part dread, part desperate hope, all of it laced with the same burning love that had not dimmed in 4 years. He had spent the day in torment, reviewing every line of the file Marco had compiled, staring at grainy surveillance photos of Emily, carrying grocery bags that looked too heavy for her thin arms, watching video from the team's discreet cameras as she knelt on the apartment floor to feed the children, spoonfuls of watered-down oatmeal, while she herself ate nothing. Each image had driven another nail into the coffin of his composure. Remorse was no longer a feeling. It was a physical wound bleeding steadily inside his chest. He knocked 3 soft measured raps on the metal back door. Inside, Emily froze with a sponge in her hand. The kitchen was small, lit only by the overhead fluorescent that flickered every few seconds. She had been scrubbing the prep table for the 3rd time, trying to make the place feel less like defeat. Her hands were raw from bleach and cold water. Her apron hung loose on a frame that had once been soft and curved but was now sharp angles and hollows. She had not eaten since yesterday's half sandwich shared 5 ways with the children, and the dizziness came in slow waves, making the room tilt. She knew that knock. Not the sound exactly, but the weight behind it. Her stomach dropped. For one long moment she considered pretending no one was there. Then she thought of the eviction notice taped to her front door, the CPS visit tomorrow morning, Noah's next blood draw, and the way Sophia had asked that afternoon why Mommy's hands were always cold. She opened the door, a crack chain still latched. Sebastian stood there, fair-skinned face, half in shadow, steel blue eyes locked on hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "Emily," he said, voice low, rough, with everything he had carried for 4 years. She stared at him. Horror bloomed first, cold numbing, then confusion, then a sharp stabbing fear that made her knees tremble. The man who had once held her like she was the only warm thing in the world now stood in a coat that probably cost more than her yearly rent, looking richer, more untouchable, more dangerous than ever. Her mind spun. Dizziness swept through her again. She gripped the doorframe to keep from swaying. "What do you want?" Her voice came out small, timid, the polite whisper she used when speaking to landlords or caseworkers. Someone older, someone with power over her life. "Let me in, please." She hesitated. Every instinct screamed to slam the door. But the bakery was freezing. The heat had been turned off again, and tomorrow the caseworker would see the children sleeping in coats because there were not enough blankets. She unlatched the chain with shaking fingers. Sebastian stepped inside. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded final. The kitchen smelled of yeast, bleach, and exhaustion. A single stool stood by the prep table. The rest of the space was taken by cooling racks, a battered mixer, and stacks of empty flour bags she reused for trash. Emily backed up until her hips hit the counter, arms crossed tight over her chest like armor. Sebastian looked around slowly, taking in every detail: the cracked tile floor, the oven door held shut with duct tape, the small whiteboard where she wrote daily specials that never sold out. His gaze lingered on a child's drawing taped to the wall, 5 stick figures holding hands labeled Mommy, Sophia, Lucas, Mia, Ethan, Noah. The sight pierced him deeper than any knife. "You're thinner," he said quietly. Emily's laugh was bitter, almost soundless. 4 years of raising quintuplets on minimum wage and charity will do that. He took 1 step closer. She flinched. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't come closer." Sebastian stopped. His hands flexed at his sides, wanting to reach for her, knowing he had lost that right. Inside him, love and guilt collided in violent waves. He wanted to pull her against him, warm her cold hands, feed her until the hollows in her cheeks filled again. But the memory of her face 4 years ago, shattered, trusting, destroyed, held him frozen. Remorse tore at him raw and relentless. How many nights had she cried alone while he slept in silk sheets? How many times had she measured medicine against rent while he signed deals worth millions? "I saw them yesterday," he said. "In the park. 5 of them. My eyes, my jawline. Emily, they're mine." Her face drained of color. She swayed, caught herself on the counter. Pain lanced through her chest, not physical, but something worse. "They're mine," she said, voice cracking. "They've always been mine. You made sure of that." Sebastian closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them, the storm inside showed plainly. "I didn't know. You didn't want to know. That's not true." "Isn't it?" She stepped forward now, small and fierce, despite the tremor in her limbs. "I found out I was pregnant 1 week after you looked me in the eye and told me I was nothing. 1 week after you said I was a mistake you regretted. I sat on the bathroom floor of that same apartment, freezing because the heat was off, holding a test with 2 lines, and I cried until I couldn't breathe. I thought about not keeping them. I stood outside the clinic for an hour in the snow, 23 years old. No family, no money, no one. The man I loved had just called me trash. I almost walked inside." Sebastian felt the air leave his lungs. He staggered back 1 step, hand pressing to his chest as though to hold his heart in place. "But then I thought, they're mine. Even if their father hates me, they deserve to live. They deserve love." Her voice broke. "So I kept them. All 5. I carried them through 7 months of bed rest in a shelter because I couldn't afford rent. I gave birth alone in a county hospital emergency C-section, no one to hold my hand. Noah came out barely breathing. He spent 3 months in NICU, while I slept in a chair beside his incubator. I still owe $47,000 for that. I'm still paying it off $5 at a time." Tears slid down her cheeks now, but she did not wipe them. "And every day since I've chosen them over sleep, over food, over pride. I've gone to bed hungry so they could eat. I've shivered through winters because the radiator breaks every year, and I can't afford the repair. I've smiled for them when I wanted to scream. And you walked away. You chose your world over us. So don't stand here now and pretend you didn't know what you were doing." Sebastian's knees wanted to buckle. The guilt was unbearable, violent, suffocating. He had protected her from bullets and blades, but not from this. Not from the slow, grinding cruelty of poverty he had forced her into. Love for her roared through him, passionate, desperate, all-consuming. He wanted to drop to his knees, press his forehead to her feet, beg until his voice failed. But he knew words were worthless now. "I was wrong," he said, voice hoarse. "I thought I was keeping you safe. Rival factions had your picture. Threats. I thought if I made you nothing to me, they'd leave you alone. I thought cruelty was the only way to keep you breathing." Emily stared at him. Confusion warred with fury, with the tiniest, most dangerous flicker of something softer, something she had buried deep. "You decided for me," she whispered. "You played God with my life. With their lives. I know." Silence stretched between them, thick, painful, full of everything unsaid. Outside tires crunched on gravel. Headlights swept the alley. Sebastian tensed instantly. Two men stepped from a dark sedan, same faction from the night before, bolder now. One carried a metal pipe loosely at his side. Sebastian moved before thought, placing himself between Emily and the door. "Stay inside," he said quietly. Emily's eyes widened. "What are you?" He opened the door just enough to step out, closing it behind him. The two men stopped. Recognition flashed. Rossi, the one with the pipe, said, "This ain't your block anymore." Sebastian's voice was calm, deadly. "It is tonight. Walk away." The second man laughed, short, nervous. "Boss says she's leverage. Says you're soft now." Sebastian took one step forward. His presence filled the alley. Broad shoulders, cold eyes, the quiet menace of a man who had ended lives without raising his voice. "You tell your boss," he said softly, "that if anyone touches her or those children, I will burn what's left of his operation to the ground, and I will do it slowly." The men hesitated, then backed away, disappearing into the night. Sebastian returned inside. Emily stood exactly where he had left her, pale, trembling eyes, huge. "You're still in that world," she said. "Not a question." "I'm trying to leave it," he answered. "For you. For them." She shook her head slowly. "I don't trust you. I can't, I know. But tomorrow CPS comes. They'll take the children if I can't show stability. I have nothing left to show." Sebastian looked at her, really looked. The thin wrists, the cracked lips, the exhaustion carved so deep it might never leave. Love surged again, fierce, protective, overwhelming. He stepped closer slowly, giving her time to retreat. "Let me help," he said. "Not because I deserve it. Because they do. Because you do." Emily's eyes filled again. She wanted to scream at him. She wanted to collapse into him. She wanted to run. Instead, she whispered, "I need to think." It was not yes, but it was not no. And for Sebastian, in that freezing kitchen lit by one flickering bulb, it was enough to keep breathing. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, two broken hearts stood inches apart, torn, bleeding, and for the first time in 4 years, beating in the same painful rhythm. Tuesday morning arrived in Chicago like a sentence. The sky was the color of old steel, low and heavy, with the promise of rain that never quite fell. Emily Harper stood in the narrow hallway outside her apartment door, at 7:45, arms wrapped around Noah, because he had woken with a low fever again, the kind that made her stomach knot with terror. The other 4 children clung to her legs, Sophia on one side, Lucas on the other. Mia and Ethan pressed against her thighs, small bodies radiating warmth she could not afford to lose. She had dressed them in their best clothes, hand-me-down sweaters and jeans she had washed by hand in the kitchen sink because the laundromat was too expensive. Her own outfit was the same faded denim jacket and thin cotton dress she had worn for 3 winters running. The fabric hung loose now, the seams frayed, the hem stained from years of spills she could never quite bleach out. She had not slept, not really. After Sebastian left the bakery the night before, she had sat on the floor beside the children's mattress until 3 a.m, staring at the eviction notice taped to the door like a death warrant. The caseworker, Miss Elena Vasquez, was due at 8. Emily had rehearsed every plea in her head, promises she knew she could not keep. The apartment smelled of damp plaster and yesterday's oatmeal. The radiator hissed once, then fell silent again. Cold seeped through the floorboards and into her bare feet. A knock came sharp, official. Emily opened the door with numb fingers. "Miss." Vasquez stood there in a neat gray coat, clipboard in hand, expression professionally kind but unyielding. Beside her was Mr. Delgado, the landlord, short balding arms folded across his chest like a man who had already won. "Miss Harper," Miss Vasquez began, voice measured. "This is the scheduled home visit." "May we come in?" Emily stepped aside, throat too tight to speak. The children shrank behind her. Noah buried his hot face in her neck. Mr. Delgado did not wait for permission. He pushed past, eyes sweeping the single room with open disdain. 5 months, Miss Harper. 5 months and not a dime. I've been patient. Too patient." He pulled a thick envelope from his coat pocket. "This is the final eviction notice. You have 7 days to vacate. No extensions. No excuses." Emily felt the floor tilt. Dizziness crashed over her black spots, dancing at the edges of her vision. She clutched Noah tighter to keep from falling. "Please," she whispered, voice small and trembling, the timid politeness she used when begging for mercy. "I just need a little more time. The bakery is picking up. I'll pay. I swear." You've said that for 4 months, Mr. Delgado snapped. I've got a family ready to pay double. In advance. Miss Vasquez wrote something on her clipboard. Miss Harper, I understand you're trying. But the conditions here, overcrowding, lack of heat, visible signs of hardship, are serious concerns. If we cannot confirm immediate improvement in the children's living environment, I will have no choice but to recommend temporary removal for their safety. Emily's knees buckled. She sank slowly to the floor. Noah still in her arms, the other 4 pressing closer, sensing the terror rolling off her in waves. Tears came hot and fast, silent at first, then breaking into soft, choking sobs. She tried to muffle against Noah's hair. No, she whispered. Please, no. They're all I have. I've never hurt them. Never. I'd die before I let anyone take them. The children began to cry soft, confused whimpers that tore at her worse than any knife. Mr. Delgado cleared his throat. 7 days. That's it. Miss Vasquez's pen paused. Her eyes softened fractionally. I'll need to see documentation of a plan by end of week. Stable housing. Medical care continuity for Noah. Financial stability. A low voice cut through the hallway like a blade. Is there a problem here? Everyone turned. Sebastian Rossi stood at the far end of the corridor, coat open, hands loose at his sides. He had arrived 10 minutes earlier, parked discreetly around the corner, and waited. The moment he heard raised voices through the thin walls, he had moved. Miss Vasquez straightened instinctively. Mr. Delgado's mouth opened, then closed. Sebastian walked forward, slow, deliberate, the quiet authority of his presence filling the cramped space. His steel-blue eyes swept the scene. Emily on the floor, surrounded by 5 frightened children, tears streaking her face, the eviction papers, the clipboard, the landlord's smug expression. He stopped beside Emily, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, the faint scent of expensive wool and cedar. She looked up, shock freezing her tears mid-fall. I'm Sebastian Rossi, he said, clearly voice calm but carrying the weight of command. Father of these children. Emily's breath caught. A soft, disbelieving sound escaped her, half sob, half gasp. Miss Vasquez raised an eyebrow. Your name isn't on any birth certificates, Mr. Rossi. A mistake I'm correcting today, he replied without hesitation. I only learned of their existence recently. I intend to be fully involved from this moment forward. Mr. Delgado snorted. Nice story. Doesn't change the fact she owes me $6,000. Cash certified check or out in 7 days. Sebastian took out his phone, sleek black, the kind that cost more than Emily's monthly rent. He tapped once. Marco, he said into the speaker, transfer $30,000 to Miguel Delgado's account. Right now. He looked at the landlord. Your account number. Mr. Delgado blinked. What account number? Sebastian repeated, patient as stone. The landlord stammered, pulled out his own phone, read off the digits. 30 seconds later, his device buzzed. He stared at the screen, eyes widening, color draining. 30,000, Sebastian said. That covers the back rent, late fees, and a generous convenience fee for your immediate cooperation with Child Protective Services. The eviction is withdrawn. You will not file further reports. You will not harass her again. Understood? Mr. Delgado swallowed hard. Yes, of course. No problem. He shoved the papers back into his pocket and nearly ran down the stairs. Miss Vasquez watched the exchange with sharp eyes. Mr. Rossi, financial intervention is helpful, but it doesn't address long-term stability. Sudden wealth doesn't erase years of hardship. I still need to see proof of safe, appropriate housing and a care plan. Sebastian nodded once. You'll have it. Emily and the children will move today to my property in Lake Forest, a separate guest residence on the estate. Gated, secure, 5 bedrooms, full kitchen, private access. You can inspect it any time. I'll provide documentation of financial capability and medical continuity for Noah within the hour. Emily stared up at him, numb, dizzy, world tilting again. Sebastian. He knelt slowly, suit pants pressing into the dirty hallway floor without hesitation. He looked straight into her eyes, voice dropping to something soft, raw, almost pleading. Let me do this, he said. Not for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. For them. For you. They deserve warmth, food, safety, medicine without fear. Please, Emily. Tears spilled fresh down her cheeks. She looked at the children, Sophia clutching her leg, Lucas's lower lip trembling, Mia hiding her face, Ethan rocking slightly, Noah's small hand burning against her neck. Then she looked at Sebastian, wealthy, powerful, untouchable, yet kneeling in filth for her. Inside her, suspicion warred with something deeper: fear, confusion, a tiny, terrified spark of hope she could not name. The man who had shattered her was offering to save her. Again. It felt like a trap. It felt like a miracle. She closed her eyes. A long, shaking breath escaped her. "If I say yes," she whispered, voice cracking, "it's only until I can stand on my own. Only for them, not for us." Sebastian's throat worked. "Anything you need." She nodded once, small, exhausted. "Okay." He rose, offered his hand. She stared at it for a long heartbeat, then placed her cold fingers in his warm palm. He helped her up gently, steadying her when her knees wobbled. The children watched wide-eyed. Miss Vasquez closed her clipboard. "I'll need full documentation by end of day. I'll schedule a follow-up visit at the new residence tomorrow." She left quietly. Sebastian turned to Emily. "My car is outside. We can go whenever you're ready." She looked around the apartment one last time at the mattress on the floor, the stacked crates that served as shelves, the single bulb hanging bare from the ceiling. Everything she owned fit in 3 worn suitcases and 2 black trash bags. She swallowed hard. "I need to pack. I'll help." He knelt again, this time beside the children. Sophia studied him with curious steel blue eyes so like his own. "Are you really our daddy?" she asked softly. Sebastian's voice thickened. "Yes, princess. I'm here now." Emily watched him, watching the powerful man speak gently to frightened toddlers, and felt something crack inside her chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something close to wonder, and beneath it a deep, aching fear that this warmth would vanish again. Outside, 2 men in dark jackets lingered near the corner watching. Sebastian's gaze flicked toward them. He stepped to the window, made a single sharp gesture. The men vanished. Emily did not see. She was too busy folding tiny sweaters with trembling hands, tears falling silently onto the fabric. Sebastian carried the first suitcase down the stairs, then the second, then lifted Noah gently from her arms, when her strength faltered. In the hallway, he paused beside her. "Thank you," he said quietly. She looked up at him, green eyes, swimming voice barely a whisper. "Don't thank me yet," she said. "Just don't disappear again." He met her gaze, remorse and love, burning equally fierce. "I won't." And for the first time in 4 years, she allowed herself to believe maybe, just maybe, he meant it. The drive from Pilsen to Lake Forest took 47 minutes, but to Emily it felt like crossing an ocean. She sat in the back seat of the black Range Rover beside the children's seatbelts, carefully fastened around small bodies that had never ridden in anything so smooth or quiet. The leather was soft, heated, smelling faintly of new car and cedar luxuries she had forgotten existed. Outside the tinted windows, the city gave way to wide lawns, wrought iron gates, and homes that looked like museums. Inside the vehicle, silence pressed heavy except for the soft breathing of 5 exhausted toddlers and the occasional sniffle from Mia. Sebastian drove himself. No driver, no entourage, hands steady on the wheel, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every few seconds. Each time he caught Emily's gaze, something raw flashed across his face before he looked away. Remorse sat like a stone in his throat. He had brought them here to safety, yet every mile widened the chasm he himself had dug the life he had forced her to endure, versus the one he had lived. The contrast burned. Her thin coat, patched at the elbows, lay folded on her lap like a shameful secret. His overcoat, wool hand-stitched, worth thousands, hung forgotten on the passenger seat. Love for her surged again, fierce and punishing, demanding he turn the car around and kneel in that freezing hallway, until she believed him. But he knew words were cheap. Only time, only proof could begin to mend what he had shattered. The Lake Forest estate appeared at the end of a private lane lined with ancient oaks, a sprawling stone mansion set back from the water lights glowing warm in every window. But Sebastian turned left before the main house, following a discreet gravel path to a separate guest residence, a modern single-story structure of glass and cedar private, gated overlooking the lake. No main house staff, no prying eyes, just space. 5 bedrooms, a kitchen larger than her entire apartment, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the dark water of Lake Michigan. He parked. The children stirred, blinking at the sudden stillness. Emily stared through the windshield. This is yours," was he corrected quietly. "Now it's yours. For as long as you need." She swallowed. The disparity hit her like a physical blow, her trash bags of belongings in the trunk versus this house that breathed wealth. Humiliation rose hot in her throat. She had spent 4 years measuring formula by the drop, choosing between diapers and Noah's medicine, shivering under thin blankets while the wind howled through cracked windows. And now this. It felt wrong, unfair, like charity she did not deserve from the man who had once called her a mistake. Sebastian opened the doors. Marco had already delivered the suitcases and bags. They waited neatly on the wide front porch. He lifted Noah from Emily's arms, gently, carefully, and the boy did not protest, too tired to fight the stranger who smelled faintly of expensive cologne and safety. Inside the house smelled of clean wood and fresh linen. Hardwood floors gleamed under recessed lighting. The open kitchen had marble counters, a double oven, a refrigerator taller than Emily. A living room stretched toward the lake, plush sofas arranged around a stone fireplace already laid with logs. 5 bedrooms branched off a short hallway, each with its own bathroom, each already made with fresh sheets and child-sized pajamas folded on the beds. The children wandered in slow awe. Sophia touched a velvet throw pillow as though it might vanish. Lucas stared at the enormous windows. Mia whispered, "It's like a castle, Mommy." Emily stood frozen in the foyer, arms wrapped around herself. Dizziness swept through her again, exhaustion, hunger, shock colliding. She swayed. Sebastian was at her side in an instant, hand hovering near her elbow but not touching. "Sit," he said softly. "Please." She shook her head. "I need to settle them." He nodded. Together they moved the children through bedtime rituals that felt surreal. Baths in deep tubs with endless hot water. Toothbrushing at marble sinks. Stories read on beds that swallowed small bodies whole. Emily's voice trembled as she sang the same lullaby she had sung in the freezing apartment, soft, timid cracking on every high note. Sebastian watched from doorways, heart tearing itself apart. He saw the way her hands shook when she tucked blankets. Saw the hollows under her eyes, the way her shoulders curved inward from years of carrying everything alone. Guilt clawed deeper, violent, unrelenting. He had missed 4 birthdays, 4 Christmases, 4 winters of watching her freeze while he sat beside roaring fires in penthouses. Love for her burned hotter with every detail he noticed, passionate, consuming a fire he could no longer control. When the children finally slept, cheeks flushed from warm baths, small hands clutching new stuffed animals, Marco had quietly provided. Emily stood in the hallway, swaying with fatigue. Sebastian guided her to the kitchen island. "Sit. Just for a minute." She obeyed, too tired to argue. He moved with careful precision, pulled milk from the refrigerator, whole fresh, not the powdered kind. She had stretched for months, warmed it in a saucepan, poured it into 5 small mugs for morning. Then he set a plate in front of her, sliced apples, cheese, fresh bread still warm from the oven the housekeeper had stocked earlier. Emily stared at the food. Tears welled again. "I can't," she whispered. "You have to," he said gently. "For them. You can't care for them if you collapse." She picked up a slice of apple, small, trembling. The first bite tasted like guilt and gratitude, and something dangerously close to relief. She ate slowly, tears falling onto the plate. Sebastian watched in silence every bite she took, twisting the knife of remorse deeper. When she finished, he spoke. "I want to help. Not just money. Not just a house. I want to learn them. All of them." Emily looked up, green eyes wary, exhausted. "They're not easy. Noah needs medicine at 7 and 7. Sophia has a severe nut allergy, nothing with even a trace. Lucas asks questions until he understands the world. Mia needs routines, or she melts down. Ethan, he gets overwhelmed by noise, by touch. He needs quiet corners, predictable things." Sebastian listened, every word carving itself into him. "Tell me more." She did, soft, halting voice cracking. When she spoke of Noah's chemotherapy scars of nights she had held him through fevers, while praying the hospital would not take him away for unpaid bills. Sebastian absorbed it all, guilt and love warring in violent silence. The next morning, chaos arrived like a storm. Sebastian attempted breakfast pancakes from a mix he had never used before. The first batch burned black. Smoke filled the kitchen. The alarm shrieked. Sophia screamed in terror, thinking the house was on fire. Lucas planted himself in front of Emily protectively. Mia covered her ears. Ethan rocked back and forth on the floor, hands clamped over his head, sobbing from the noise. Noah clung to Emily's neck, feverish and frightened. Sebastian stood amid the wreckage, charred pan in hand, feeling more helpless than he ever had in boardrooms or back alleys. Emily took 20 minutes to calm them. Soft words, gentle rocking promises the house was safe. When the children were settled with cereal, the backup she had insisted on bringing, she looked at Sebastian. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "I do," he answered. "I want to." That afternoon, he drove to a bookstore in Highland Park, bought every book on childhood allergies, sensory processing, pediatric oncology recovery, autism spectrum traits. He read late into the night on the living room sofa, while Emily slept in the master bedroom door open, listening for any sound. Days blurred into a fragile routine. Sebastian learned to check labels 3 times for nuts. He learned to warm Noah's medicine to exactly body temperature. He learned to sit in silence beside Ethan when the world became too loud, letting presence be enough. He learned to answer Lucas's endless questions without impatience. He learned to braid Mia's hair into princess styles from YouTube tutorials at 2 in the morning. Emily watched from doorways, guarded, fearful but slowly, painfully curious. She saw the powerful man on his knees wiping applesauce from Sophia's chin. Saw him sit cross-legged on the floor reading the same car book to Ethan 17 times without complaint. Saw him carry Noah to the window at dawn so the boy could watch the lake without speaking. One evening after the children were asleep, Emily found Sebastian on the back terrace overlooking the water. Wind off the lake was sharp, but he stood coatless, sleeves rolled up, staring at the dark waves. She stepped beside him, keeping distance, but closer than before. "You're different," she said softly. He turned. "I was never good enough for you. I'm still not." She looked at him, really looked. "You're trying. I have 4 years to make up for." Silence stretched cold wind, carrying the scent of pine and lake water. Emily's voice trembled. "I'm scared. Of trusting you. Of this disappearing. Of waking up tomorrow and finding out it was a dream." Sebastian stepped closer, slowly giving her space to retreat. "I'm scared too. Scared I'll fail you again. Scared you'll never forgive me. Scared I don't deserve this second chance." She met his eyes. Tears shimmered. "Then why keep going?" "Because I love you," he said, simply, voice rough. "I never stopped. And I love them. More than power. More than anything I've ever had." Emily's breath caught. Something inside her cracked, painful, hopeful, terrifying. She did not speak, but she did not step away. And in that quiet moment, with the lake whispering against the shore, 2 wounded hearts stood inches apart, torn, bleeding, and for the first time beginning to beat toward each other again. The first week in the Lake Forest guest house passed in a fragile, almost dreamlike rhythm. Mornings began with the soft click of the coffee maker real beans, not the instant powder Emily had rationed for months. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows onto hardwood floors that never felt cold. The children woke slowly, no longer startled by the sound of wind rattling loose windows or pipes knocking in the night. They padded barefoot across rooms that swallowed them whole, exploring with cautious wonder. Emily moved through the days like someone walking on glass, every luxury a reminder of the life she had survived without. She still woke at 5 habit too deeply carved to break and stood at the kitchen island making oatmeal the way she always had, measured, carefully stretched thin, 5 small bowls. Even though the pantry was stocked with fresh fruit, whole milk, eggs, bread that had never seen a discount shelf, she could not bring herself to use it freely. Not yet. The fear lingered that this would disappear the way warmth always had before. She caught herself counting the children every few minutes, touching their heads, making sure they were still here, still safe, still hers. Sebastian watched her from doorways and across rooms. He saw the way she flinched at sudden noises, how her shoulders stayed rounded even when no one was looking, how she ate, standing up, small bites, never finishing her own plate until the children were done. Each observation drove the knife of remorse deeper. He had left her to measure teaspoons of formula by lamplight while he dined in restaurants where a single entree cost more than her monthly rent. Love for her burned hotter with every detail, fierce, possessive aching. He wanted to wrap her in every comfort he could give, wanted to erase the hollows in her cheeks, the tremor in her hands. Yet he knew any sudden movement would shatter the fragile trust she had begun to extend. Late on a Thursday afternoon, October still holding the last breath of autumn, the front gate buzzer sounded. Sebastian checked the security feed from his phone. A sleek white Mercedes stood outside. Lauren Whitaker sat behind the wheel, sunglasses on, lips pressed into a thin line. His stomach tightened. He had not spoken to her since the park. Had not answered her calls, her texts, her increasingly furious messages. He had meant to end it cleanly, formally, but the children had arrived and everything else had fallen away. He met her at the gate himself. Lauren stepped out in high heels and a cream wool coat that cost more than Emily's yearly grocery budget. Her blonde hair was perfect, her makeup flawless, her posture radiating the certainty of someone who had never once worried about the next rent payment. "So this is where you've been hiding," she said, voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I had to hire someone to find my own fiancé. How flattering." Sebastian stood with his back to the guest house, blocking the path. "You shouldn't be here, Lauren." "Shouldn't be here," she laughed, short, brittle. "We're 6 weeks from announcing an engagement. 6 weeks from the merger of 2 of the most powerful families in Chicago. And you vanish. No call, no text, nothing." He kept his voice low. "It's over. I should have said it sooner. I'm sorry." Her eyes narrowed. "Sorry isn't enough. I deserve an explanation." Before he could answer, the front door of the guest house opened. Emily stood on the threshold, holding Noah on her hip. The other 4 children clustered behind her legs. Sophia clutching her mother's jeans, Lucas watching with wide eyes, Mia hiding her face, Ethan rocking slightly from side to side. Lauren's gaze snapped toward them. Her expression shifted, shock, then disgust, then something colder. "What is this?" she asked, voice rising. "Sebastian." "What the hell is this?" Sophia, innocent and fearless in that moment, peeked out and waved a small hand. "Hi, lady." Do you want pancakes? Daddy makes really good ones now. The word daddy landed like a gunshot. Lauren recoiled a step. Daddy Emily's arms tightened around Noah. The boy whimpered, sensing the sudden tension. Ethan pressed his hands over his ears. Sebastian moved fast, instinctive, placing himself between Lauren and the doorway. Lauren's laugh was sharp, almost manic. You have children. You have 5 children with her. Careful, Sebastian said quietly. The word carried ice. Careful, Lauren's voice cracked higher. I'm your fiancé. Our families have been planning this for years, and you're living in your guest house with some woman and her illegitimate— Stop, Sebastian said. The single word silenced her. He stepped closer, voice dropping to something lethal and calm. You do not speak about my children that way. Ever. Again. Lauren stared at him as though seeing a stranger. You're throwing everything away. For this I already have, he said. She looked past him to Emily, pale, thin, exhausted, holding 5 children like they were the only shield she had left. You're pathetic, Lauren spat, living off his guilt. You think he'll stay? He's a Rossi. He'll tire of playing house and come crawling back. Emily flinched. The words struck deep, every fear she had carried since the park, every doubt she had whispered to herself in the dark. Her arms shook. Dizziness swept through her again. She leaned against the doorframe to stay upright. Sebastian felt her pain like it was his own. Rage flared, cold and precise. Get in your car, he told Lauren. Leave. Now. She laughed again, hysterical. You think this is over, my father will know. Your grandfather will know. The entire city will know that Sebastian Rossi walked away from power for a charity case. And 5, Sebastian closed the distance in 1 step. He did not raise his voice. He did not touch her. But the air around him became heavy, dangerous. If you or anyone in your family or anyone connected to you ever speaks about my children or Emily again, I will make sure every business deal your father has touched in the last 20 years is quietly, legally dismantled. I will bury him in audits, liens, investigations, and I will do it smiling. Do you understand? Lauren went white. She looked from him to Emily to the 5 small faces watching from the doorway. Then she turned heels, clicking sharply on the stone path, and left without another word. The Mercedes roared away. Silence fell. Emily stood frozen, Noah's face pressed against her neck, the other children clinging tight. Her breathing was shallow, rapid. Tears slid silently down her cheeks. Sebastian turned to her slowly. I'm sorry, he said. She shouldn't have come here. Emily looked at him, green eyes, swimming voice barely audible. She called them illegitimate. Sebastian's chest cracked open. They're not. They're mine. They're ours. No one gets to take that away. Emily's knees gave way. She sank to the step, still holding Noah. The children crowded around her, small hands patting her arms, her face. Sebastian knelt in front of her, suit pants on stone, no hesitation. Look at me, he whispered. She did, slowly, fearfully. I will never let anyone hurt them, he said. Or you. I swear it. On whatever is left of my soul. Emily searched his face, searching for the lie, for the moment it would all disappear again. She found only pain, only love. Only the same tearing desperation she felt inside her own chest. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to believe in you. I know, he answered. But I'm going to prove it. Every day. Until you don't have to wonder anymore. She closed her eyes. A single tear fell onto Noah's hair. Then so quietly he almost missed it. Okay, 1 word. 1 fragile bridge. Sebastian exhaled, shaky, raw. He stood, offered his hand again. She took it, cold fingers and warm palm. He helped her up, steadying her when she swayed. Inside, the children were already drifting toward the living room, drawn by the promise of cartoons on the enormous television they still treated like magic. Sebastian and Emily stood together in the doorway, watching them, watching each other. Outside, the wind off the lake picked up. Somewhere in the city, a black sedan idled at the curb, 2 men watching the gate. Sebastian saw them. His jaw tightened. He closed the door, softly, deliberately. And in that quiet click, he made another vow. No one would touch this family. Not again. Not ever. The second week in Lake Forest began with deceptive calm. Mornings filled with the soft clink of cereal bowls and small voices asking for seconds. Real milk, fresh fruit, things Emily had once dreamed of giving them. Without rationing. The house stayed warm even when the lake wind howled outside. The children slept through the night for the first time in years. No coughing from cold air, no waking to check if the blankets had slipped off someone smaller. Emily caught herself standing in doorways, watching them breathe, counting chests rising and falling, afraid the peace was only borrowed. But peace in her life had always been fragile. It shattered on a gray Wednesday morning in late October of 2025. Emily's phone buzzed on the kitchen island while she sliced apples for snacks. The screen lit with Miss Vasquez's name. She answered with fingers already trembling. Miss Harper, the caseworker, said, voice tighter than before. I need to see you and Mr. Rossi immediately. There are new developments. Serious ones. I'm on my way now. I won't be coming alone. The line went dead. Emily stood frozen, phone still pressed to her ear. The apple in her hand slipped, rolled across the marble, and fell to the floor with a dull thud. Sebastian appeared from the hallway, sleeves rolled, hair still damp from the shower, saw her face and crossed the room in 3 strides. Emily. She looked up at him, green eyes, wide pupils blown with sudden terror. She's coming. Now, she said. New developments. She's not coming alone. Sebastian's jaw tightened. He took the phone from her shaking hand, set it down gently. Breathe. She couldn't. Her chest rose and fell too fast. Dizziness swept in black spots, dancing at the corners of her vision. She gripped the counter to stay upright. They're going to take them. I knew it. I knew this was too good. I knew. He cupped her elbows, careful, steady. No one is taking them. But his own voice carried the first crack of uncertainty. 28 minutes later, a gray county sedan pulled up beside a black and white patrol car. Miss Vasquez stepped out first, clipboard in hand, face grave. A uniformed officer followed, hand resting near his belt, eyes scanning the property. Sebastian met them at the door, Emily behind him, holding Noah like a shield. The other 4 clustered in the living room doorway, watching with wide, silent eyes. Miss Vasquez did not smile. Mr. Rossi, Miss Harper. May we come in? They moved to the formal living room. Emily sat on the edge of the sofa, Noah in her lap, the others pressed against her sides. Sebastian remained standing between them and the visitors like a wall. Miss Vasquez opened her file. This morning my office received an anonymous tip. Detailed. Credible. Alleging that Mr. Rossi is actively involved in organized crime, that this residence, while safe on the surface, places the children in ongoing danger due to threats associated with his activities. Emily made a small wounded sound. Sebastian did not flinch. The allegations are about my past, not my present. Miss Vasquez looked up. The tip included names, dates, photographs of known associates entering and leaving this property in the last 48 hours. It claims you have not severed ties, that the children are at risk of retaliation, abduction, or exposure to violence. The officer shifted his weight. We take these reports seriously, sir. Emily's arms tightened around Noah. That's a lie. He's here. Every day. With us. He's not doing anything like that. Miss. Vasquez's voice softened fractionally. I want to believe that, Miss Harper. But I have a legal obligation. Until we can verify these claims are unfounded, I must ensure the children's safety. I'm giving you 24 hours to provide concrete evidence of a stable, risk-free environment. Full documentation of Mr. Rossi's current status, financial independence from any illicit sources, security measures, and a verified care plan. If I cannot close this file by tomorrow morning, I will have no choice but to place Isabel, Lucas, Mia, Ethan, and Noah into temporary protective custody. Emily's world narrowed to a pinpoint. She felt the floor drop away. Numbness spread from her chest, outward arms, legs, face. She could not breathe, could not think. Only feel the small, warm weight of Noah against her, the way Lucas's hand clutched her sleeve. The soft whimper Mia tried to swallow. No, she whispered, then louder, breaking. No, please. I've kept them safe. Alone. For 4 years. I've never let anything hurt them. Never. Tears came fast, hot, unstoppable. She rocked Noah instinctively, as though motion could hold reality together. Sebastian knelt in front of her, again, suit jacket, forgotten on the chair. He took her free hand in both of his. Look at me. She did, eyes swimming, terrified. No one is taking them, he said, each word carved from iron. No one. Miss Vasquez stood. 24 hours, Mr. Rossi. I suggest you use them wisely. The visitors left. The front door closed with quiet finality. Emily collapsed forward, forehead against Sebastian's shoulder. Sobs muffled against his shirt. The children crowded closer, small hands patting her back, whispering mommy in confused fear. Sebastian wrapped his arms around her, careful of Noah between them, and held on. Inside him, guilt and fury collided in violent storm. He had brought this danger. His name, his past, his failure to cut every thread cleanly. Love for her roared through the chaos, passionate, desperate, all-consuming. He would burn the world down before he let them be taken. Yet the weight of what he still carried, the outfit's lingering eyes, the enemies circling, threatened to drown him. He lifted her chin gently. I have a plan. She searched his face, doubt, hope, terror warring in her eyes. I'm going to give it all up, he said. Everything. The legitimate holdings go into an irrevocable trust for the children. The rest, the shadow side, I'm turning over to the FBI. Full immunity in exchange for testimony. I'll sign the papers today. They'll have proof by morning. Emily blinked. You're giving up everything, yes. Your family, your power, your name, yes. She stared at him, disbelief giving way to something raw. Why? He cupped her face, thumbs brushing tears. Because 4 years ago I chose wrong. I chose power over you. Over them. I won't make that mistake again. You're my family. They're my family. Nothing else matters. A fresh wave of tears fell. She leaned into his touch, small, trembling. Noah's fever spiked again last night. I thought it was just a cold. But if they take him, if they take any of them, I can't lose access to his doctors. To his medicine. I can't go back to begging for charity care. Sebastian's heart cracked wider. He pulled her closer, careful, reverent. You won't. I swear it. They sat there on the floor now, children curled around them until the sobs quieted into exhausted silence. Outside, a black sedan idled at the end of the lane. 2 men watched the house. Sebastian saw them through the window. His jaw clenched. He kissed Emily's temple, soft, fierce. Stay with them. I'll be back before dark. He stepped outside. The sedan started to pull away. Sebastian moved fast, silent, cutting across the lawn to block the road. The car stopped. 2 men stepped out, same faction, same cold eyes. Rossi, the driver said. Your grandfather sends regards. Says you're making a mistake. Sebastian's voice was ice. Tell Vincenzo if he comes near this house, if he sends one more whisper to CPS, I will end what's left of his empire myself, and I won't need a gun to do it. The men exchanged glances, then drove off. Sebastian returned to the house. Emily stood at the window watching him. She did not speak, but when he stepped inside, she walked straight into his arms, cold cheek against his warm chest. He held her tight, desperate. And in that quiet, trembling embrace, 2 hearts beat against each other, torn, bleeding, and for the first time refusing to let go. 24 hours. 1 day to save everything. Sebastian Rossi, the man who once ruled shadows, would burn them all down for the light in her eyes. The 24-hour clock ticked like a heartbeat in the quiet house. By late afternoon, the sky had turned the bruised purple of an October bruise, heavy clouds pressing down on Lake Michigan until the water looked black and angry. Inside the guest residence, the children played in the sunroom. Soft voices, the clatter of wooden blocks, the occasional giggle that still sounded like a miracle to Emily. She moved among them on autopilot, folding laundry that smelled of fabric softener instead of mildew, wiping small hands sticky with apple slices, checking Noah's temperature for the 3rd time in an hour. The fever had broken overnight, but fear clung to her like damp clothes. Every cough, every flush of cheek sent fresh panic spiraling through her chest. Sebastian had been gone since dawn. He had kissed her forehead before leaving, soft, lingering, a promise pressed into skin, and whispered, I'll be back before they come. Trust me. Then he disappeared into the city with a slim leather folder containing every document he could gather. Trust papers for the children notarized. Renunciations of Rossi family holdings. Preliminary immunity agreements drafted overnight by a discreet attorney who owed him favors. He had not told her the full plan, only that he was going to end it permanently. Emily had knotted throat too tight to speak. She wanted to beg him to stay, wanted to cling to his coat and tell him she was afraid not just of losing the children but of losing him again. But she had only whispered, be careful. Now the house felt too large without him. Every creak of settling wood made her flinch. She kept the curtains half drawn, watching the driveway, counting minutes. At 4:17, the front gate buzzer sounded. Emily froze in the kitchen knife, still in hand from cutting carrots. The children looked up from their blocks, curious, not yet afraid. She set the knife down with shaking fingers and walked to the security panel. The camera showed 3 black SUVs idling outside the gate. The middle one's door opened. Vincenzo Rossi stepped out, 75 years old, silver hair swept back, gray eyes cold as winter steel. 6 men in dark suits flanked him like statues. Her stomach dropped. She pressed the intercom. Voice, small, trembling. What do you want? Vincenzo's voice came through, crisp and commanding. Open the gate, girl. We need to speak with my grandson. He's not here. A long pause. Then softer, colder, then we'll wait. Emily's knees buckled. She leaned against the wall, breath shallow. Horror clawed up her throat. Vincenzo had never come himself before. This was not a warning. This was war. She herded the children to the playroom. Soft words, promises of a movie, anything to keep them calm. Locked the door behind them. Then she called Sebastian. He answered on the first ring. "Emily, your grandfather's here. At the gate. With men. He wants to talk." Silence. Then low and lethal, "Stay inside. Do not open the gate. I'm 20 minutes away. Sebastian, 20 minutes. I love you." The line went dead. She stood in the hallway alone, listening to the distant rumble of engines outside the gate. Tears came fast, silent. She slid down the wall until she sat on the floor, knees to chest, rocking slightly the way Ethan did when the world became too loud. Minutes stretched into eternity. Then the gate groaned open. Emily's heart stopped. She ran to the window, saw the SUVs rolling through slow and deliberate. Vincenzo stepped out, first coat open against the wind cane, tapping the stone drive. His men fanned out, professional, silent. She backed away from the glass. The front door opened without a knock. Vincenzo entered slow, regal, followed by 4 men. The others stayed outside. Emily stood in the foyer, thin frame, rigid hands clenched at her sides. "You can't come in here." Vincenzo's eyes swept her, disdainful, assessing. "I already have." "Where are my grandchildren?" he asked, voice deceptively mild. "Safe," she whispered. "Away from you." He smiled, thin, without warmth. "Sebastian has made a grave error. He thinks he can walk away from blood, from legacy. He forgets who raised him." Emily's voice trembled but held. "He chose us." Vincenzo stepped closer. "He chose weakness. A woman who cannot even keep a roof over their heads without charity. 5 children raised in squalor. And now he drags the Rossi name through the mud for this." The words struck like slaps, every humiliation she had endured, flashing before her nights, shivering under thin blankets, days counting pennies for formula, months begging hospitals for mercy. Tears burned her eyes. "You don't know anything about us," she said softly. "I know enough," Vincenzo replied. "And I know my grandson will return to his senses once he sees the cost." He nodded to one man. The man moved fast, silent, toward the playroom door. Emily lunged, small, desperate, placing herself in front of it. "No." The man grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise. She cried out, sharp, pained. Vincenzo watched impassively. "Bring the youngest. The sick one. He'll be the most persuasive." Emily fought, wild, frantic nails, raking elbows flying. "Don't touch him, please don't." The playroom door burst open. Sebastian stood there, coat gone, shirt sleeves rolled, eyes burning. He had driven the last 10 miles at reckless speed, tires screaming on wet roads, heart in his throat. He saw Emily pinned against the wall, arm twisted, tears streaming. Saw Noah in the arms of another man, small body rigid with fear. Rage exploded through him, white-hot, blinding. But he did not charge. He stepped forward, slow, deliberate. "Let her go," he said quietly. The man holding Emily tightened his grip. Vincenzo lifted a hand. "Sebastian. Good of you to join us." Sebastian's gaze never left Emily's face. "Let her go. Now." Vincenzo studied him. "You've changed. Softer. Weaker." Sebastian's voice dropped lower. "I've never been stronger." He moved, swift, controlled, closing the distance in 2 strides. His hand closed around the wrist of the man holding Emily, firm, unyielding. Pressure increased until the grip loosened. Emily stumbled free, gasping. Sebastian pulled her behind him, shielding her with his body. The man with Noah hesitated. Sebastian looked at his grandfather, gray eyes to gray eyes. "You touch one hair on his head," he said, "and I end you. Not with violence. With everything I have left. Every account, every favor, every secret. I'll bury you so deep the sun won't find you." Vincenzo's face hardened. Silence stretched thick, electric. Then Vincenzo nodded once. The man set Noah down. The boy ran straight into Emily's arms. She dropped to her knees, gathering him close, sobbing into his hair. Sebastian turned to Vincenzo. "Leave," he said, "and never come back." Vincenzo stared at him, long measuring. Then he turned, cane tapping once, twice, and walked out. His men followed. The SUVs pulled away. Sebastian closed the door, locked it. Then he turned. Emily sat on the floor, children crowded around her, rocking, Noah, tears streaming. Sebastian knelt slowly beside her. She looked up, eyes red, shattered. He reached out, hesitant. She leaned into him, forehead against his chest. He wrapped his arms around her, around all of them, holding tight. "I'm sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry." She shook her head against him. "You came back. I always will." Outside, the wind howled. Inside, 5 small bodies and 2 broken hearts clung together, torn, bleeding, and for the first time whole. Sebastian pressed his lips to Emily's temple, soft, fierce. "I love you," he said against her skin. She lifted her face, tears shining. and for the first time in 4 years she whispered back, "I know." The evening after Vincenzo's departure felt like the first true breath Emily had taken in years. The house settled into a hush broken only by the soft lap of lake water against the shore and the occasional murmur of children dreaming in their beds. She sat on the wide leather sofa in the living room, knees drawn up, wrapped in one of Sebastian's cashmere throws, soft as a cloud, smelling faintly of cedar and him. The children were asleep upstairs. Noah's fever had stayed down all day. For once, the silence felt like safety instead of threat. Sebastian sat beside her, not touching but close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body cutting through the chill that still lived in her bones. He had changed into a plain gray sweater and jeans clothes he rarely wore, chosen tonight perhaps to look less like the man who once ruled shadows. His face was drawn shadows under his eyes, deeper than usual. The paperwork was done, trusts, signed FBI contacts, notified immunity deal in motion. 24 hours had passed. Miss Vasquez would arrive tomorrow morning with closure papers. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like the eye of a storm. Emily broke the quiet first. Her voice came small, hesitant, the timid politeness she used, when fear still lingered beneath hope. "You really did it. All of it." Sebastian looked at her steel blue eyes, soft in the lamplight. "I had to." She searched his face. "Your grandfather." He looked at me like I was dirt, like the children were mistakes. Sebastian's jaw flexed. Remorse surged again, sharp, violent. "He's wrong. He's always been wrong about you." Emily's fingers twisted in the throw. "I still feel like I don't belong here. Like I'm borrowing this life. Like any minute the floor will open, and I'll fall back into that apartment, cold, dark, counting crumbs so the kids can eat." He reached out slowly, covering her hand with his. "You belong here. You always did." Tears shimmered in her eyes. She did not pull away. They sat in stillness, two wounded people breathing the same air for a long time. Then Sebastian's phone vibrated on the coffee table. He glanced at the screen. Marco. Emily felt him tense. "What is it?" he answered, voice low. "Talk to me." Marco's words came fast, clipped. Sebastian listened without expression. Then his face changed color, draining eyes going flat and lethal. He ended the call. Emily's heart kicked hard. "Sebastian," he stood slow, deliberate. "Marco just confessed." She blinked. "Confessed. He's the one who sent the tip to CPS. He's the one who fed Vincenzo information. He's been working against me for months." Emily stared, shock numbing her lips. "Why?" Sebastian's voice came rough, cracked. "Jealousy, ambition, and something worse. He wanted you. 4 years ago, before I sent you away, he thought if he removed me, he could step in, protect you, own you." The words landed like blows. Emily's breath stopped. Dizziness crashed over her, violent, disorienting. She pressed a hand to her chest as though to hold her heart in place. He knew. All this time, Sebastian nodded, once face carved from stone. "He knew you were pregnant. He knew about the threats. He used them." He waited. Horror rose in her throat, cold, choking. She stood unsteady, backing away until her legs hit the sofa. "He watched me struggle. He watched me starve. He watched Noah get sick and did nothing." Sebastian stepped toward her, slow, careful. "Emily, no." Her voice cracked. "How many nights did I cry myself to sleep thinking you hated me? How many times did I stand outside the clinic freezing, deciding whether to keep them? And he knew. He could have stopped it. He could have told you." Sebastian's hands flexed, wanting to hold her, knowing she might shatter if he touched her now. Guilt tore through him, vicious, unrelenting. He had trusted Marco with his life, with hers, with their children's, and Marco had betrayed them all. "I'm going to fix this," he said quietly. "How?" she whispered. "He has them." Sebastian froze. What Emily's phone buzzed on the table, unknown number. She stared at it like it was poison. Sebastian took it, answered on speaker. Marco's voice came through, calm, almost gentle. "Sebastian. Emily. I have the children. All 5. They're safe. For now." Emily's knees gave out. She sank to the floor, soundless, breathless horror stealing her voice. Sebastian's hand tightened on the phone until plastic creaked. "Where?" "An old warehouse on the South Branch. Pier 39. Come alone. No police. No FBI. You bring the immunity papers unsigned. You walk away from everything. From her. From them. Or I start with Noah. He's fragile. You know that." The line went dead. Emily made a small, broken sound, half sob, half scream. She rocked forward, hands clutching her stomach as though the pain were physical. "They're gone. They're gone." My baby's Sebastian dropped to his knees beside her, arms around her shaking frame. They're not gone. They're alive. We're getting them back. She looked up, eyes wild, drowning. He'll kill them. No. Sebastian's voice cracked with certainty. He wants me broken. Not them dead. He thinks he can still win. Emily clutched his shirt, nails digging in. I can't lose them. I can't. I survived everything. Cold, hunger, hospitals, shame, but I can't survive losing them. Sebastian cupped her face, thumbs wiping tears. You won't. I swear on my life. He stood, pulled her up with him. We're going. Together. She nodded, shaking, terrified but resolute. They drove in silence, city lights blurring past the windows. Emily sat rigid, hands clenched in her lap, whispering prayers she had not said since childhood. Sebastian gripped the wheel until his knuckles whitened, remorse and fury warring inside him. He had trusted the wrong man. Again. And his children, his blood, were paying the price. The warehouse loomed on the south branch, rusted metal, broken windows, the river black and oily behind it. Sebastian parked a block away. They walked the rest, Emily's thin coat no match for the wind, Sebastian's arm around her shoulders, shielding her as best he could. At the side door, Marco waited alone, arms crossed. He looked at Emily, eyes softening for one dangerous second, then hardening again. You brought her, he said. Sebastian stepped in front of Emily. Where are they? Inside. Safe. For now. Emily's voice came small, trembling. Please, let me see them. Marco studied her, long searching. You always were too soft. That's why he never deserved you. Sebastian's hand flexed, wanting to strike, holding back. Marco opened the door. They stepped into dimness, concrete floors, rusted beams, the smell of river rot and old oil. At the far end, 5 small figures sat on a stack of pallets. Sophia clutching Lucas's hand. Mia curled against Ethan Noah, asleep in Sophia's lap. A single bulb swung overhead, casting long shadows. Emily cried out, soft, broken, and ran. Marco moved to block her. Sebastian stepped between them, voice low, lethal. Touch her and you die. Marco stopped. You're too late, Sebastian. The papers. Sign them. Walk away. Or I make one call and the kids never leave this building. Emily reached the children, dropping to her knees, gathering them into her arms. Sobs shook her frame, relief and terror colliding. Mommy's here. Mommy's here. Sebastian stared at Marco, betrayal, cutting deeper than any blade. You were my brother. Marco's laugh was bitter. I was your shadow, always second. Always watching you take what I wanted. Sebastian's voice dropped. You wanted her. Marco's eyes flicked to Emily, hungry, pained. I would have kept her safe. Not sent her into hell. Emily looked up, tears streaming. You watched me suffer. You could have stopped it. Marco's face twisted. I thought he'd come back for you. When he didn't, I waited. Planned. This was supposed to be clean. Sebastian stepped closer. It's over, Marco. The FBI is already moving. Vincenzo's empire is collapsing. You have nothing left. Marco pulled a phone from his pocket. One call. One. Sebastian lunged fast, controlled, knocking the phone from Marco's hand. It skittered across concrete. Marco swung wild, desperate. Sebastian caught his wrist, twisted, forced him to his knees. Marco looked up, eyes burning. You'll never be free of this life. Sebastian leaned close. I already am. He released him, stepped back. Marco stayed down, breathing hard. Sirens rose in the distance, faint, then louder. Emily gathered the children closer, rocking them, whispering love. Sebastian walked to her, slowly knelt beside them. She looked up, tears shining. You came. I always will. She reached out, trembling, fingers touching his cheek. He covered her hand with his, holding it there. Behind them, FBI agents entered, quiet, efficient. Marco did not resist. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, a family clung together, torn, bleeding, and for the first time beginning to heal. Sebastian pressed his forehead to Emily's voice, raw. I love you, he whispered. She closed her eyes, tears falling. I love you too, she answered, soft, broken, true. And in that moment, amid concrete and shadows, their hearts beat as one. The night after Marco's arrest felt like the hush before thunder. The children slept deeply in their new beds, exhausted from terror, soothed by Emily's whispered lullabies, and the steady rhythm of Sebastian's voice, reading the same picture book 3 times until eyelids finally closed. The house was quiet except for the low murmur of the lake against the shore and the occasional crackle of the fireplace Sebastian had lit to chase away the lingering chill in the air. Emily sat on the edge of the master bed, still fully dressed in her thin sweater and jeans, staring at her hands. They trembled faintly even now. She could still feel the cold concrete of the warehouse floor under her knees, still hear Sophia's small sob when the agents carried the children out to safety. The relief had been so sharp it hurt. but beneath it lived something darker, the knowledge that danger had come too close. Again, Sebastian stood at the window back to her, watching the dark water. He had showered twice since returning, as though he could wash away the smell of river rot and betrayal that clung to him. His shirt hung open, sleeves rolled, revealing the lean strength of a man who had once lived by violence, but now fought every instinct to keep it buried. The immunity deal was signed. The trusts were irrevocable. Vincenzo's remaining operations were crumbling under FBI pressure. It should have felt like the end. Instead, it felt like the beginning of something worse. Emily's voice came soft, timid, almost polite, as though she were still speaking to someone with power over her life. "You're still thinking about him." Sebastian turned slowly. "Marco." "Yes." She looked down at her lap. "He said he wanted to protect me, that you never would." Sebastian crossed the room, slow, careful, and knelt in front of her. "He lied. To you. To himself. To me." Emily met his eyes, green depths shimmering with unshed tears. "I believed you hated me for so long. I built my whole life around surviving that. And now you're here. And I don't know how to stop waiting for it to disappear." He reached out hesitant, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "I'm not going anywhere." She caught his wrist, small fingers tight around his. "Promise me. I promise." The moment stretched fragile, electric. Then the house lights flickered once, twice. A low rumble rolled through the walls, not thunder. Sebastian stood instantly, body shifting into something harder, sharper. Emily's breath caught. What was that? He moved to the window, pulled the curtain aside. Outside the estate's perimeter lights had gone dark. In the distance near the main gate, a single vehicle idled, headlights off. Sebastian's voice dropped. "Stay here. Lock the bedroom door. Keep the children inside." Emily rose, shaking. "Sebastian." He turned, cupped her face in both hands. "I love you. Whatever happens, stay with them. Protect them." He kissed her hard, desperate, pouring 4 years of regret and longing into one fierce press of lips. Then he was gone, slipping out the side door into the night. Emily locked the bedroom door behind him, heart hammering so violently she felt dizzy. She gathered the children into the master bed, small bodies curling against her, whispering stories, until they drifted again, but she stayed awake, listening. Outside, Sebastian moved through shadows, silent, trained. He reached the main gate in minutes. Vincenzo waited there alone this time, no enforcers, only a single black sedan behind him. The old man leaned on his cane, silver hair catching the faint moonlight. "You're late," Vincenzo said. Sebastian stopped 10 feet away. "You should have left when I told you to." Vincenzo smiled, thin, cold. "I gave you everything. Power. Legacy. And you throw it away for a woman who can barely keep herself alive." Sebastian's hands flexed. "She kept 5 children alive. Alone. While you sat in your mansion counting money stained with blood." Vincenzo's eyes narrowed. "You think love makes you strong. It makes you vulnerable." He lifted his cane, tapped the ground once. From the darkness behind the sedan, 2 men emerged, carrying something between them. A bomb-crude, wired, blinking red. Sebastian's blood turned to ice. Vincenzo spoke quietly. "One call. One press. This house burns. Your new family burns. Walk away now, reclaim your place, or watch them burn." Sebastian stared at the device, then at his grandfather. Remorse surged, violent, consuming. He had brought this. His name. His past. Every choice he had made before seeing Emily in the park had led here. But love burned hotter. He stepped forward, slow, deliberate. Vincenzo's men tensed. Sebastian stopped inches from the bomb. Then he looked at Vincenzo, gray eyes to gray eyes. "I choose them," he said. Vincenzo's face twisted. "Fool." He nodded. One man raised a gun. Sebastian moved fast, instinctive, tackling the man holding the device. The gun fired once, sharp crack in the night. Pain exploded in Sebastian's shoulder, hot, blinding. He grunted, did not stop, wrenched the bomb free, hurled it into the lake. The water swallowed it. The second man lunged. Sebastian rolled blood, soaking his shirt, caught the man's wrist, twisted, until the gun clattered to the ground. Vincenzo watched, face blank. Sebastian rose bleeding, breathing hard, stood between the old man and the house. "Go," he said. "Or the next bullet finds you." Vincenzo stared long, measuring. Then he turned slowly, got into the sedan. The car pulled away. Sebastian staggered, vision blurring, dropped to one knee. Sirens rose in the distance, FBI alerted by the gunshot. He made it back to the house. Blood trailing behind him, pounded once on the bedroom door. Emily flung it open, saw him, saw the blood. She cried out sharp, anguished, caught him as he swayed. "Sebastian!" He sank against her forehead to hers. "They're safe. It's over." She half carried him to the bed, hands shaking, ripped his shirt open, saw the wound through and through, shoulder bleeding steadily. Tears fell onto his skin as she pressed a towel to the wound. "You're shot," she whispered, voice breaking. "I'm fine," he lied, voice rough. "I'd take 100 more before I let anyone touch you again." She sobbed, soft, helpless, leaning over him, pressing kisses to his forehead, his cheeks, his lips, desperate, frantic. He caught her face weak but steady, kissed her back hard, hungry, pouring every unspoken year into the press of mouths. She pulled back, tears falling. "I thought I'd lost you." "Never," he whispered. "Never again." Paramedics arrived minutes later, FBI with them. They stabilized him on-site pressure bandages, then loaded him into the ambulance. Emily rode beside him, holding his hand the entire way, children safe with a trusted neighbor, Marco, had once vetted, now under federal protection. In the hospital room after surgery, after the doctors said he would heal, Emily crawled onto the narrow bed beside him, careful of the IV, the bandages. He turned his head, weak, pale, but eyes clear. She pressed her forehead to his tears falling onto his cheek. "I love you," she whispered, fierce, broken, true. "I never stopped. I was just too scared to say it." Sebastian lifted his uninjured hand, cupped her face. "I never stopped either," he answered, "and I'll spend every day proving it." She kissed him, slow, deep, desperate years of pain and longing melting into something fierce, consuming alive. Outside, the city lights glittered cold, indifferent. Inside, two hearts beat against each other, torn, bleeding, and finally whole. Months passed in Lake Forest like pages, turning in a book Emily had once believed would never have a happy chapter. Winter arrived sharp, clean, blanketing the estate in snow that glittered under pale sunlight. The children learned to sled on gentle hills behind the house, their laughter rising like steam in the cold air. Noah's checkups came and went with good news, steady counts, no relapse shadows. Sophia mastered braiding her own hair. Lucas asked questions about stars, until Sebastian bought a telescope and spent freezing nights on the terrace naming constellations. Mia danced in the wide living room to music played on a sound system worth more than Emily's old apartment building. Ethan found quiet corners with soft blankets and puzzles, his world no longer so overwhelming. Emily watched it all from the edges at first, still thin, still cautious, still waking some nights in a cold sweat, believing the children had been taken again. But slowly, the fear receded, replaced by something warmer, steadier. She began to cook, not just survive meals stretched thin, but real food roasts, with rosemary from the greenhouse soups thick with vegetables she no longer had to count one by one. Sebastian stood beside her at the marble island, sleeves rolled, learning her recipes. Burning the first batch of cookies so badly the smoke alarm shrieked, then laughing deep unguarded when the children cheered the charred results. Anyway, Sebastian had kept his word. The legitimate real estate holdings were downsized into a modest portfolio managed quietly. The shadow empire was gone, dismantled by federal agents using the testimony he had given under immunity. He walked the streets of Chicago now without bodyguards, without the invisible armor he once wore. Men who once lowered their eyes when he passed now treated him like any other businessman. Some sneered, most simply moved on. Yet the change cut deepest in the quiet moments. One evening in early spring April of 2026, Emily found him on the terrace overlooking the lake. The water was thawing, ripples catching the last pink of sunset. He stood coatless despite the chill hands in his pockets, staring at the horizon as though searching for something lost. She stepped beside him, wrapped in the same cashmere throw she had claimed as her own, close enough that their shoulders brushed. "You're quiet tonight," she said softly. He turned steel blue eyes, softening the instant they met hers, thinking about how close I came to losing all of this. His voice cracked on the last word. "How many nights you spent cold and hungry because I thought power was the only way to keep people safe." Emily reached out, small hand finding his larger one. "You came back. You chose us." "I almost didn't." Remorse rose again, sharper now, tempered by time, but never dulled. "Every time I look at Noah's smile, every time Sophia calls me daddy without hesitation, I remember the years I stole from them. From you." She squeezed his hand. "We're here now." He lifted her fingers to his lips, soft, reverent. "Because of you. You survived what I never could have. You kept them alive. You kept hope alive." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "I didn't do it alone anymore." They stood in stillness, wind carrying the scent of pine and thawing earth until Sebastian spoke again. "I want to ask you something." She tilted her head, curious, a little afraid. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box. Emily's breath caught. He opened it. Inside lay an emerald ring, deep green like her eyes, surrounded by tiny diamonds that caught the dying light. "Emily Harper," he said, voice rough with emotion. "I have nothing left to offer but myself. No empire, no power, just a man who loves you more than he knows how to say. Marry me. Not because I can give you this house or this life, but because I want to spend every day earning the right to stand beside you." Tears fell freely now. She stared at the ring, then at him, seeing not the Mafia boss who once terrified the city, but the man who had knelt in her filthy hallway, who had taken a bullet for her, who had chosen love over legacy. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, fierce. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, perfect fit. Then he pulled her close, kissed her, slow, deep, pouring every unspoken apology, every vow, every burning moment of love into the press of mouths. The children found them later, Sophia leading the charge, cheering when they saw the ring. Noah tugged Sebastian's sleeve. "Does this mean you're staying forever, Daddy?" Sebastian knelt, pulled all 5 into his arms. "Forever," he promised. They married in June on the private stretch of beach below the estate. No grand ceremony, just Flynn and a few trusted friends, the children scattering wildflowers. Tessa, Emily's old neighbor who had become family, crying quietly in the front row. Emily wore a simple white dress she had chosen herself, not expensive, but hers. Sebastian wore a plain gray suit. When the officiant asked if he took her as his wife, his voice cracked on the word, "I do." Afterward, they danced barefoot in the sand, children spinning around them, lake water lapping at their toes. Years later, on a quiet October evening in 2029, Emily stood at the same terrace railing, watching Sebastian teach Lucas how to skip stones across the water. The other 4 ran along the shore, Sophia leading a game of tag Mia. Laughing so hard she doubled over Ethan, trailing behind with a seashell collection, Noah racing ahead with steady, healthy strides. Emily touched the emerald ring worn smooth from years of daily life and felt the familiar ache of gratitude mixed with memory. She had once measured survival in teaspoons of oatmeal, nights of cold wind through cracked windows, shame so deep it lived in her bones. Now she lived in warmth, in laughter, in love that asked nothing but presence. Sebastian glanced up, caught her eye, smiled the soft, unguarded smile that still stole her breath. She walked down to meet him. He slipped an arm around her waist, pulled her close. "Happy?" he asked quietly. "More than I ever knew was possible," she answered. They watched the sun sink orange, bleeding into purple, 5 small figures running ahead. Sebastian pressed his lips to her temple. "I lost everything once, and gained more than I ever deserved." Emily leaned into him. "We both did." In that quiet moment, wind soft, water whispering, they stood together, proof that love could cross any divide. Wealth and poverty could not separate compassion. Skin color held no meaning when hearts chose each other. Knowledge teaches us that true strength lies in sacrifice. Lesson shows us that redemption comes through action, not words. Education reminds us that every human being deserves dignity, second chances, and unconditional care. We wish everyone watching this video good health, a joyful life, peaceful days, and a home filled with love. If this story touched your heart, please tap the like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the YouTube channel Alex Truths with notifications on, so you won't miss any of the emotional, uplifting stories we bring every day. How did this story make you feel? Does it remind you of anything in your own life? Have you ever witnessed or experienced a love that overcame impossible odds? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We truly want to hear what's in the newsy, deepest part of your heart. Your words mean everything to us. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Goodbye for now, and we'll see you again in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.